Where do travelers get their information? Where is your go-to source to find out how to be a better traveler? Of course, besides Travel Evolved, I get it. Really, truly, where do you guys go to get your information? Well, for so many of you, you guys are going to Facebook groups. There's great information, there's some misinformation, but I want to break it down today on this week's edition of Travel Evolved and kind of walk you through what I've seen as the evolution of Facebook groups, where they came from, where they are now, how they're helpful, how they're actually hurtful to your travel career. And we're going to go over all of that on this week's edition of Travel Evolved. It's Travel Evolved. I'm Mark Holloway. Welcome to the episode, everybody. So glad you could join us. I really appreciate it. Gosh, what a crazy, I guess, end of summer, beginning of fall. What a wild time to be a traveler. I always say that, I hate the term, it is what it is, but this is really what it is. There's not a lot of other ways to explain this industry right now in the current state of the market besides just all over the place. It really is. It is. I've watched this industry go from being so just, the same with, slightly high rises in bill rates, slight, lowerages of bill rates as inflation would hit back in 2008, 2009, all those different time periods. But this particular time frame, being a traveler, bad shoulder, is probably one of the strangest and I hope also one of the most exciting times to be a traveler. I understand the stress that many of you guys are going through. I know that a lot of you are used to a certain amount of money and you're having to settle potentially either for less money or potentially to make the same kind of money or near it. You may have to be compromising the quality, or I guess the quality of your assignment. That kind of is a pretty sweeping statement that covers a lot of things, which includes location, how good the hospital or facilities ran, how nice they treat travelers, all the gamut that we have to go through to get it. It does feel like right now, like some of the nicest jobs are certainly not the best paying, and that's just the way it is. Just been fascinating talking to some counterparts and a lot of you out there and what you're experiencing. I think misery likes company. I think that that's something we can kind of say is honestly with what you guys are experiencing. Again, there's so many different categories right now of traveling healthcare professionals. There's the old guard, there's the new guard, there's the guard that's kind of dabbling here and there. There's the people that decide they want to stay in healthcare travel. The people that have said absolutely not, I want to get out of here and go back to a permanent gig. It's just a really interesting time frame, like I've said repeatedly already in this episode. So I want a couple of quick announcements. Number one, we're going to go live on Travel Evolve, our Facebook group, which is kind of timely that we're doing it on Facebook groups. We're going to start going live. We're going to try to do it a couple times a week. We think it's important. Here's what the thought process was behind this. The team and I sat down. Listen, we're trying to get some good content on the actual group itself. It's not easy to put things out there that are engaging. You're trying to incorporate as many people as you can without excluding them or having it be all one type of specialty or one either allied or nursing. It's really quite difficult. Not to mention you guys are all working different times of day. You never really know what's going to be something that you guys really want, what's something that you don't. We do know this. We do know that our goal at Travel Evolved, which is really the Facebook group, again timely, is to present and give you guys something that you're not getting elsewhere. One of the things we're going to talk about today is how just common and redundant a lot of Facebook groups are. They're just different specialty, or like there's 20 different ICU, RN, traveling groups, maybe 100, if not more. There's every state has its own, both nursing, potentially an allied group. It's all over the place. There's a lot of redundancy out there. We're trying to offer something different than just job postings and hoping that you catch the job posting and moderating it to the point of insanity where literally if you're not posting a job posting, you're going to get kicked off the group. And I'll beat that up a little bit later because I think it's a little ridiculous and it doesn't help. It's not helpful for the traveler, but we'll talk about that. We're trying to go live to basically kind of give you guys a little bit more in depth or an opportunity to start asking some questions. And this is where I'm going to stick my neck out on live and answer some questions for you guys. Now, the idea, just so you know what we're trying to do, is we want to have kind of a theme of each time we go live, and it's going to correspond with these episodes. So right now, this may change and probably will as we learn and evolve our own situation. We're going to try to have our Thursday evenings really reflect the current episode that we've just released within the week. And we do it every 6 days, so there'll be a point where sometimes there may be 2. We'll catch up. On Mondays, we're also going to go live, and we want to go back and start to re-hit some of the episodes that we kind of flew through. Maybe it's been a while since we visited them, and it may be time. And again, based upon the time list, I don't know if we're going to go just in sequential order or we're going to pick and choose some episodes. We'll highlight it on the Travel Evolve page that day, or perhaps the day before, so you guys have an opportunity to listen to the episode or watch the episode if you haven't. But here's the whole point behind this, is that we were going to try to have a lot of the questions kind of circle around that episode and to go into some greater detail. Listen, we do the best we can. I write a lot of these. I get some help writing them, and we kind of talk about as a team. We don't spend a huge amount of time because we've got real jobs that we have to do besides just presenting this. So we do our best, but clearly, I know that sometimes my message is either repeated to the point of insanity, which just means there's not a lot of content in that episode. I'm doing my best to really hit the message home, or it's an important message that I really want to hit home with you, and I really want you to understand it. Oftentimes there's things, especially when it comes to numbers and margins and the way companies work, that it's really, really difficult without a visual aid, and we just don't have the time to put different graphics up and spend that kind of time doing this. We're trying to get this out every 6 days. That would definitely dip into the company that we're running and how we're and the travelers that we're taking care of, and it just doesn't make sense. But we wanted to do something along those lines. We just can't figure out how to make that happen in a timely manner, unless we only did one of these every couple of weeks and we spent time doing that. This live on our Facebook group page, we think is an opportunity for you to ask some questions, maybe for us to slow down and go through some things in greater detail. Maybe I can get some examples. Maybe I can hold up some things. Maybe I can share some information that either I said incorrectly or too rapidly or didn't go in enough detail about. But it's the idea is that you can chime in. And I will also say, and I'm going to say this repeatedly while we're live, is that it doesn't have to be a question or a topic that you're asking that has to do with the episode. We'd like to kind of stick with that, but as you guys all know with me, there is nothing that is off limits. I will literally give you the best answer I can for anything that I know. If I don't know, I'll tell you that. I'll give you a best guess. If it is a guess, I'll tell you it's a guess. It may be an educated guess, but it could be a guess nonetheless. So we're going to try to really peel back some layers on the industry. And I think that going live, which we've never done before, and if I can commit to it, will be the case. So here's the schedule. We're trying to go every Monday and every Thursday, and we're going to try to go at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, which for me is either 6 o'clock if I'm in Denver or 5 o'clock if I'm out here, which means I've got to be done with my workday and be able to present. We're also trying to incorporate the potential that we can both get day and night travelers, that hopefully one of those 2 days you may or may not be working. If you're an allied professional, if you're, have a 5-day a week, 8-hour shift position, and you just aren't, you're on the Central, or maybe even you're on Mountain or Pacific time, and it's not going to work, we're going to mix some things up. And I do think that I'm pretty sure that all these episodes and these lives that we're going to do will stay on that website and be the test of time. So you can always go back and rewatch them if you missed out. But I'm really hoping for some participation. We're going to go live here real soon to just kind of announce it. And I would not be shocked if nobody's on there at all, because we've never announced this and we're not going to. By the time I record this, we'll have done one. I'm sorry, after I record this, we'll have done one, and then we're going to hopefully be able to do this and go live right away. So this episode is actually being recorded pretty quickly, and we're editing it. We've got some others we recorded that got pushed back for that very reason, so we can go live on this one. I want to talk about what we're doing. So please, if you haven't subscribed or asked to join Travel Evolved on Facebook, just look up Travel Evolved. And I mean, we're really not saying no to anybody. We're trying to keep recruiters and other agencies off there because they're going to convolute it and they're going to try to they're going to get their feathers ruffled. Let's put it that way. And we want this to be where it's completely transparent. We can talk about everything without having somebody who's commission based or somebody who's got some skin in the game that doesn't like the kind of questions and answers that we're giving. We're doing our best to keep the group pretty private on that regard. But as far as if you're a traveler or if you're thinking about being a traveler, welcome. But sign up, because that way I think you do get notifications when we're going to go live and what we're going to do. So that's a big, long intro, but it's important because it's a big thing that we're attempting to do. And it does mean another commitment on my part. It's pretty easy. There's nothing to rehearse or whatever. I just have to make sure I'm available for however long we're going to do it. I mean, this may be half an hour. If the topic's great and we got a lot of participation, we'll go as long as I can. But hopefully the general idea is that you'll get something again that you've never been given in our industry, which is a chance to talk to somebody who, I mean, I'm a CEO of a company. I've been in this industry for a long time. I've worn a lot of hats. I understand it. It's really pretty simple. It's a simple industry. I understand this industry backwards and forwards. I certainly can't guess and prognosticate against what the future holds as far as our market goes. We can talk about that. But when it comes to things that you've been dying to ask and really want to know the straight answer to, whether it's something that your recruiter or somebody else at your agency is telling you, and you just want to know if that's bunk or if it's real, I'll do my best to let you know, and we'll just have some fun with it. So join us every Monday and every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Do the math for where you live, right? Okay, let's get into this because there's a lot here, and I just kind of want to talk about the evolution of Facebook groups with regard to travel healthcare. And I'll tell you this, it's a pretty new niche, I guess we would say. It's definitely become a recruiting mechanism, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It didn't used to be, it wasn't that at all. It basically started out where when Facebook became popular, and we're talking 15 years ago, so this is not, in my opinion, that long ago. About 15 years ago, Facebook, I don't know when Facebook launched, but about 15 years ago, it started to become something that people were starting to think about and consider for businesses. So we did see a lot of companies had a Facebook page, not a group, but a page that was dedicated and mirrored their company, talked a lot about who they were, gave you numbers and phone numbers and websites. Potentially it might be posting some of their jobs, but I don't think they were doing that back then. It was really more about, hey, come to the family. We're better than every other company out there because here's us, and maybe they would show some pictures of some people. And it was kind of another marketing tool. A lot of folks didn't really know what to do with it. And for some companies, and even some of the big ones, it started and ended with just that. And that's pretty interesting to me to think about. But that's really where the whole thing kind of began, is that every company started to see, and you had your friends. And I'm talking when Facebook was big. Now, Facebook still is a very big mechanism in our industry. So certainly there are a lot of other social media that are taking over and doing much better with regard to branding and some things. But when it comes to how recruiters and agencies and how you guys find your positions, let's be frank, Facebook is a pretty big part of the process currently. So from there, really what I noticed and what I remember, and I'm doing the best to remember, there were a few individuals, most of them were travelers, and there was a couple that came to mind that began Facebook groups. And obviously the big one, and I don't want to give any plugs or anything, but the big one came out, and it was, I guess, for lack of a better word, it started out with good intentions. I will say personally, I think it lost its way. It may have recovered its way back again, but there was a long period of time where one of the biggest Facebook groups for mostly, I think, travel nursing, I think it does Allied now, and they may have spun off and had some Allied groups, was really dominated by complaining about companies, about facilities, about just the job itself and how tough it was, and it would name names, and it was just kind of nasty. That individual who owned that group sold it for a lot of money back when you could actually sell Facebook groups and there was actual value in it. So good on her. She got in, made some money, got out. But it created a little bit of a ruffle. There's a lot of people that are upset about the fact that that individual made money. I'm a capitalist. I say go for it. If you're able to make money, good for you. And I think people that are mad because they didn't think of it first. I think is really, if you want to know my gut reaction to it. It did change some things, and a lot of folks tried to do something similar afterwards, and they were unsuccessful. I don't think they did as well as she did on it. But those groups were primarily great for bashing up an agency. And as a CEO of a company, there were times when I loved it because it would bash another company. If you got your own bashed, it was tough because it almost seemed like more often than not, like, that's not the full story. I never ran a company that was involved in that in the early days like that, because it just wasn't. It was targeting a lot of the big companies and a lot of their margins and their pay rates, and the things we all know about and things that a lot of people have grown to accept. There is trade-offs with those big companies. I've oftentimes said it. I believe that they have great value in our industry. I think that they've got an amazing amount of positions. I think you can stay gainfully employed. There's a lot of really good benefits to the big companies. It just doesn't happen to be that pay is one of them. It's different. And like I've always said, if I was running one of those companies, I would highlight the strength in which those big companies rely upon, and that is a job everywhere and staying gainfully employed, which for some people right now might be very, very important to them. They may not be getting that from their other company or the companies that they work for. So it was also a lot of facility bashing. There was a lot of complaining about a lot of facilities that even to this day are still struggling with their reputation, still struggling as to what the assignment's like. I was just talking to an individual the other day. I happens to be working through my company at one of those facilities, and we talked about it openly before he went to work, and we said, this facility has got a tough reputation of not being that travel friendly. It is a tough monster to work for, but this individual, a younger guy, he knew it, and he said, fine. We actually talked about he's on toward the end of his time. He's actually got another one going that he's going to be starting here in about 3 weeks, taking a week off. But he said, yeah, I knew it would be, and I got through it, and it was exactly as advertised. And he was good for that. But I said, can you imagine if you were one of those travelers that got kind of stuck in your ways and you didn't like that environment, and you didn't know that to be prepared for that, how tough that assignment would be. And it's interesting that he said, yeah, I definitely didn't know. So there was a lot of that going around, and there was a lot of spin-offs, and a lot of other individuals, a lot of travelers themselves started coming out with their own pages. They wanted to duplicate that lightning in a bottle that particular page had. I think they wanted to monetize it and make some money, but they did start to have some beginnings, if you will, of some Facebook groups back. I'm talking even just 10 years ago. There was the hint that there were some Facebook groups, and the idea would be to promote yourself as a recruiter, or I think there was a lot of travelers that tried to really do some good, kind of what we do here, but they started off with very good intentions on that. And then as a lot of Facebook groups happen, excuse me, they kind of lose their way, and a lot of those did. You started to see, after that, some, I guess, hip and savvy companies start to say, hey, we could create our own group. It could be different from our XYZ company, or we could even name it XYZ Group and start to get some people on there where, maybe we can start to promote our jobs and what we're doing and have it be kind of separate. Maybe we could even disguise it as if it was just a Facebook group when people really started thinking about who is the moderator of those things. And let's even have some moderators in the group be travelers, but let's have them all either be working for us or be even recruiting and traveling for us, or be married to people that are traveled to us. There was a lot of inbreeding kind of going on in some of those groups originally, and it was very obvious to some of us in the industry that they were promoting certain companies because they were owned by those companies. I mean, again, can't fault them or blame them, but a lot of travelers were fooled, and a lot of agencies were given high kudos and high marks based upon a false reputation. But again, like I say, people didn't think of that, so it worked for them, and I don't think they did it maliciously. It's just kind of how it evolved into. And that is kind of where it started. When I say it, I'm talking about what we currently have right now. It is a different model and a different situation with Facebook groups. Here's what we have right now. We started to see that recruiters primarily, if they created their own page, it was a gold mine for them. I can create a page. I can decide what goes on there. I can kick off all my competitors, not let them post. Myself and maybe some of my other, fellow recruiters could post. We could make it appear like it's a national thing, but we're basically promoting our job. And we can put some good content in there to try to keep people involved. They didn't use the word content back then. It was just, let's put some good things in there, and let's try to build that and make it look better. And it started to become a way to kill two birds with one stone. You could recruit and actually get people to go to work for you, and you could also build the brand of your company. Well, now I'll just fast forward. I'll just tell you how I feel. Right now, every day, there are probably 20, and that's probably even a low number, probably 20 new Facebook groups a day that are created that involve healthcare travel. It is insane. Because trust me, I get kicked off a lot of them. So I know, because they're here today, gone tomorrow, and I could care less if I get kicked off them, because there's literally another 100 every week that are popping back up again. It just doesn't matter. I'll tell you why I get kicked off in a little while, because I think it's kind of funny why I get kicked off, because I don't fit the mold on that stuff. But you do. And so right now what it seems to me is that the Facebook groups are drowning out their original intention. For the last 5 or 6 years, Facebook groups have been a wonderful mechanism for recruiters to now have yet another wrinkle on how to attract you. And you guys like this sometimes because it is a passive way for you to see jobs and what they're gross and what they're paying. Now, again, far away are the days where you could just post a job and you didn't have to put a rate on there. You guys, got wise and said, I don't really want that. A lot of the moderators and people who own these or started these Facebook groups have said, you got to put rates in there, which I think is really good and transparent and healthy for the industry. You guys tell me if you get bait and switched on that or a lot, or if more often than not the rate that you're being quoted is the right rate. I think it's becoming that way, but there was a long period of time when it wasn't like that. But the fact is that a lot of these groups nowadays that are just coming out and being kind of what I say a dime a dozen are just the same thing over and over again. And this new way of recruiting, in my personal opinion, which is, again, you've got people that are Facebook social media recruiters where they're throwing out jobs, they're putting a little meme together, they've got their stuff, they've got a template, they've changed the background, they maybe changed the font, but boom, they can spit out a bunch of these, maybe their top paying positions or where they have the most jobs or where they really think that you're going to be interested, and they can post Arizona jobs in an Arizona job forum group. They can post Arizona ICU jobs in an Arizona ICU job. They can post respiratory therapists for Missouri in either a respiratory therapy position, or I should say group, or a Missouri group, to kill two birds with one stone. So what happens now is there's people that this is all they do all day long. 7 days a week, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, they're posting, hoping to catch you that what they post is what you're looking for, and hopefully their rate makes sense to you, and you're going to pick up the phone or you're going to instant message them and say, hey, I'm interested in this job. Now, does it work? You guys tell me. What I'm starting to notice is it feels to me, looking at it from potentially an outsider standpoint, a 36,000 foot view, I feel like it's starting to lose its power. There's so many groups with so many postings. How is it that you guys find the job you're looking for? Now, certainly you can search within a group. So let's go back to a few of my examples. Let's say you are an Arizona ICU nurse and you found I don't even know if there is one. And you found, I'm sure there is. I should rephrase that. If you found an ICU in Arizona travel nurse, in this case, position, or I should say Facebook group, you can go back and you can search that for certain keywords, and you hope that the meme or something pops up that you have it. So you could look at the last 24, 48 hours worth of postings to find your job. Now, I know that's not efficient because you're going to miss some things. Some of those memes won't post up, and you're going to have to scroll down through all the whats to get to potentially a position of interest for you. And then you have to compare the different recruiters that are posting that same position from different companies at different rates. And we've already talked about that ad nauseum on Travel Evolved and how frustrating that can be to find the one that pays the most, that maybe you're familiar with, that you think has all the bells and whistles and you want to apply to that job. What it feels like to me is that if you just kind of fast forward and you start looking at the next 2 or 3 years, how efficient is that going to be? And my answer is I don't believe it's going to be efficient. I already think it's losing its luster. You'll notice that a lot of them have comments turned off nowadays, which means you guys aren't liking the rates out there. I understand. Go back a few episodes. We can talk about the state of the market. And there's reasons why some of you are very unhappy, and justifiably so. And there's some reasons that you shouldn't be unhappy because it doesn't have the staying power that we all knew it wouldn't. But it doesn't matter. You're an individual. You can be happy or unhappy based upon your own, what's driving you. So they turn off the posts or they turn off the commenting because they don't want their company to get beaten up because a hospital's got a low bill rate and their agency has potentially a high margin, which means they're not offering that much money for a job, and it's going to frustrate you. So they turn off those remarks so that you don't beat the you-know-what out of that company or that recruiter. And at the end of the day, I always feel bad because it's not really the recruiter's fault. Yes, there are recruiters, as we've talked about repeatedly, that do have a floating commission plan, which means that the bigger margin they get and the more they screw you out of your hourly rate, the more money they will make. The company makes a lot more and they get a little piece of that more, which makes them happy. It's how some and many, or if not most, commission plans are based from a lot of companies. Ask your recruiter, see if he or she will be honest about it. Do you make more money if you guys, if you get between 25 and 30 or between 28 and 30, or tell me how that works. See how honest your recruiter will be. Oh, no. They don't want to talk about commission because they don't want you thinking about them making money off of you, but they do. It's just the way the industry is, has been forever. So I believe in my mind that the current state of Facebook groups is going to change. This is why we created Travel Evolved, and it started out, by the way, let me make sure I'm saying it right. I think it started out as a Facebook group, and then we started to do the podcast. I can't remember. Maybe it was the other way around, but it kind of almost feels to me like the group was there first, so that we could start to have some good open discussions, post some unique things that you weren't seeing everywhere, and then move it into what it is now. It used to be named something else. It was called Travel Insiders, and now it's Travel Evolved. And I think that Travel Insiders, that Facebook group goes back 8 years, 9 years, even though we've only been doing Travel Evolved for a little over a year. So there's a lot of history there, and you can go back and see all that history on that, which kind of shows you where we've come. But it's now going to be different. So I think that's where the industry is headed. I think right now you guys love this. First of all, I'm going to stick with my script a little bit. Here's what I like about it for you. I've kind of talked about what I think is going to be the end of this sort of thing. But for right now, I still love the fact that it is a way for you guys to get information and decide without being harassed or harangued by a recruiter or recruiters to go take this job through my company. No, don't take it through that company. Take it through my company. No, I'm better than that. I smell prettier, and I've got, I'll send you jelly beans if you buy it through us, or whatever it is that they do to convince you to take the same job hundreds of companies have through one company or the other. If it's not for money and a higher pay rate, I don't know what it would be, but that's what their game is. I believe that's going to fizzle out because it does help you to stay anonymous. You can look and poke around before you decide, okay, I'm going to commit to this recruiter and I'm going to commit to this company. If you haven't already, and they don't already have your paperwork and the information, I'm going to spend that time to give them the information that they need to be able to present me effectively in front of a facility, which usually means a self-evaluation or potentially a tested skills checklist, resume, certifications, whatever companies, the differences that they ask for. Some are more than others. But you still have to commit and decide you're going to go ahead and spend the time and your valuable time to go ahead and basically apply and go through that process through yet another company. That's a big commitment on your part. But before you do that, a good Facebook group that shows positions, I do understand that. I think there's value to that because it does allow those of you that want to be anonymous and be like, I want to choose who I talk to, not just have somebody bombard me with calls or texts or emails or whatever, and hope that I will now tell them what I want and they can go look for it. This is a better way for those of you who want to maintain control than the way it used to be. So I love that wrinkle with Facebook groups. It does offer an alternative to having to have a recruiter just constantly be calling you until you finally give in and say, okay, all right, what do you have? And here's what I'm looking for. And then you go get it. And when I show up in, how far down the pecking order I am, let me know when you have the job. And hopefully it's within the same couple of days that the job has come out. There's value to that. But I do think you guys understand where I'm going with this. And that is that I think over time, it's going to become harder and harder for agencies and recruiters to be everywhere on social media and all these different Facebook groups, which means they're limited. Again, you got to be accepted. Talk about that in a second. I'll talk about it right now. You've got to be accepted, and every one of these groups makes you guys and a recruiter and even an agency jump through some hoops to be allowed to be in the group. They'll let travelers pretty much all the time, unless you're going to go in there and stir up some you-know-what. I love you for doing that, but this is the way it is. You pretty much have carte blanche to join almost any group as a traveler. It's the agencies that don't. So here's what I'll tell you. There's a whole bunch of agencies out there that aren't in those groups because they didn't answer the questions right, or they didn't follow the rules. Maybe they forgot to put a pay rate on one of their posts, or maybe they forgot to, put 3 dots between the pay rate and make sure it's on the subject line and have the website. And there's some of these moderators and some of these group owners and creators have gotten a little bit to the extreme as to what they're requiring. And it kind of almost feels like, well, then forget it. I'm just not going to post on your site, which I guarantee many people are saying. And they don't know that they're doing that disservice. So they think, well, I've got every ICU job in Arizona. The fact is they don't. There's a whole bunch of companies that aren't posting because they don't want to go through the process of what those rules are, or perhaps they just haven't gotten to, being allowed or joining that page because it's new. There's a lot of reasons why it's not completely efficient. The moderators on some of these groups are kind of silly. Here's what I'll tell you, I get kicked off, right? So I don't post, and our company doesn't post jobs with rates on them. So right off the get-go, 90% of the Facebook groups don't like a post from us because we're not sitting there saying, here's, Phoenix, Arizona, 7P to 7A, here's the hospital, or maybe they don't say the hospital. Here's it's not a job posting. As I think it's saturated, to say the very least. So we'll get a warning, hey, you didn't post a job, this is spam, or you're just talking about the industry, or especially if we put a Travel Evolve promo. So I kind of wear 2 hats. One's the company hat, but if I'm just promoting Travel Evolve, for example, and one of my people, Angie, or somebody who goes and throws out a thing, hey, check out this podcast. Sometimes we get booted out because it's not a job. It's not a job posting. This is for ICU Arizona job postings only. If you don't do that, we're kicking you out. Even if we think it's valuable, and even if it's the people that belong to that group want to see or hear it, there are a lot of there's good information out there. But if it's not a job posting, all those job posting only groups are instantly kicking people out. Which means that you guys, the people that are part of that group, are kind of getting a disservice. Here's a curveball. Do you guys know that many of those groups charge companies and recruiters either a monthly or a weekly or a flat fee to join and post? Got one the other day. Hey, don't forget, if you want to post, we just need $5 a month so you can post. So they're getting every company for $5 a month. It's not going to get them rich. But I've always said, nothing's free in this industry. So if you're charging a company or an agency $5 for every recruiter, and they've got 20, let's say they have 10, you're charging them $50 a month just to have 10 recruiters post stuff. They're going to figure out a way to over time that does, in my opinion, along with many, many, many other things, that comes out of the traveler's pocket eventually. Nothing's free in this industry. So if you're constantly spending your ad budget on giving it to another traveler because he or she's got a Facebook group and they're charging for you to post jobs, then it's coming out of, they're actually hurting their own people that belong to that group. They're hurting travelers, in my opinion. Now, it may not have come to that, but if it continues, it'll be that way. I'll tell you this much. I know that was a trend that was happening about a year and a half ago. And a bunch of agencies just said, well, we're not going to post in your group. And sorry, this is Facebook. It should be free. And you've created a group and you're trying to monetize. And there are travelers and people that own these groups that try to monetize it, trying to make a buck here and there. Maybe, who knows, maybe make a car payment, take care of get a nice car and have all these agencies pay for their brand new car because they've got $600-700 coming in a month. A lot of us agencies just say, no thanks, but no thanks. I got 20 other pages that look exactly like yours. Some of them even have more members than you have. So I'll skip yours and I'll post mine for free as long as I'm allowed to. It just is, it's a fact. So realize you're not getting the full scope of the positions and the information on any one of these groups because of all the different things that are kind of hidden behind it. You guys just may not know about that. But it does make it kind of difficult and make it kind of interesting. What's funny to me is, I've said this before, for the most part, and again, I've had people say, no, that's not true. For the most part, 80% of agencies have 80% of the jobs. It's the same as everybody else does. Yes, there are a couple of agencies that have exclusivity. Some agencies, there's only 2 or 3 that have a certain system or certain hospital. But when I say things like that, I'm talking about the majority of positions everybody has. And everybody has, for the most part, a pretty straightforward bill rate. Yeah, some of them get it for a little bit less, a little bit more. Sometimes, if it's a subcontracting situation, it depends. But really gone are the days where you had to sit there and you picked and negotiated with that facility or system directly what you were willing to bill in order to be able to fulfill. And they used to always lowball us. And sometimes you would get a contract from a facility directly and you couldn't fulfill because the rates were too low. Vendors have done a good job of kind of leveling the playing field. But obviously, as we all know, Sometimes if they're an MSP and they've got their own recruiting team, they're offering those jobs, excuse me, at a 5 or even 10% less bill rate, and they're keeping that money regardless of whether or not the agency fulfills. So they're kind of really getting the traveler good. Though people are working through somebody else, oftentimes don't get nearly the high as a bill rate as that big company does. So it is, we all kind of have the same jobs, I guess, where I'm getting at on this thing. And that means that what you see from one company posting out there, literally, for the most part, pretty good rule of thumb, hundreds of companies have that job. It will not be to the exact same penny that company's offering, but it'll be either significantly higher, significantly less. It really depends. But one thing is for sure is that if you see a job listed on one of those sites and you believe it's legitimate and they aren't just trying to do some clickbait to get you to click on it or instant message them a job that doesn't even exist, which we've seen out there, then you know that literally hundreds of companies have that job. Hundreds of companies have that position, not just one or two for the most part. So it is kind of an indicator. You can ask your company, hey, I saw XYZ agency was offering this job in Phoenix, Arizona. I keep going to Phoenix, Arizona today. Do you guys have it? And what's your offer for this exact same position? You guys shouldn't have to negotiate, but you guys know you do. Unfortunately, in our world, it's just still the same way it is. So I believe that Facebook group job postings is kind of a lazy way to get the message out. I think it has been efficient, but my guess is that it's not going to be for very much longer. The more and more Facebook groups that are created, the more diluted each one of these groups become. Literally, if there is, and there are hundreds of respiratory therapy travel groups, I'll put it that way, hundreds, which means you'd have to belong to hundreds to get all the information, and you still wouldn't be getting it all, as I've already pointed out. It means it's going to become less and less efficient. And obviously, apps and things that we're working on, I think, replace that. It's real time. You're not getting posts and things that are old already. Literally, one of these memes can come out and it could be filled an hour later. Is that person going to take it down? No, they're not going to take that post down because it's clickbait now. You might still get it, and they may say, oh, hey, yeah, that post was a few hours ago. They did fill that, but here, I've got all these other jobs. Thanks for calling. Let's get your paperwork in. Let me send you in front of these. And you weren't even interested in that. It's an opportunity. So they're not going to take down a job that was literally closed earlier that day or a day previously. They don't go back and what's the word I'm looking for? Dismiss or delete that post. They just leave it, which means you're spending time looking for positions that may or may not be there, and it's completely inefficient. And I do believe that its day is coming. That's for sure. But I do, like I say, I like the fact that it puts you guys in the driver's seat, keeps you there, and allows you to kind of take control of, okay, I'm liking what I'm hearing from this person. I'm going to reach out to this one company or these two companies. I'm in control, and I'm going to decide. Other things do that better than a Facebook post, but there you go. You have it. A couple of things I want to tell you guys. Believe it or not, there are groups. One of them comes to mind that would curl your hair if you were allowed in. They don't allow travelers in. There's a couple of groups out there that are traveler bashing, agency bashing groups that it's pretty amazing. Name names, first names, last names, and they'll sit there and beat up a traveler, or they'll beat up a former recruiter, or they'll beat up. It's amazing that it's allowed to be out there, but you guys should know. And I mean, I think going to full transparency mode, it is one of the reasons, like we talk about being careful about burning bridges with companies, because if one of them happens to be a part of this group, next thing you know, they're telling everybody about what it was that you did. You walked off this assignment, or you accepted this job and then never, did anything, never communicated with them, which we saw a lot happening, with when rates were so crazy in crisis mode that there was just like, oh my gosh, the next day there's a better offer for something down the street that's paying $300 or $1,000 more a week. So most of us that were in the industry that really understood the way travelers, think, we're like, well, I mean, I can't really blame them. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there wasn't a lot of loyalty either way. And I think that's one of the negatives that happened while everyone was making so much money. Like I've said before, everybody was making a lot of money. I do think it hurt the loyalty factor, and I think it hurt the integrity of the industry quite a bit. I think we're getting back to that now. But be careful of some of those. Some of those groups are pretty mind-opening. I mean, it's amazing what is said and discussed, an instant message and shared on pages with them. So be aware that that's there. I talked about how people do charge that. Here's what I think is also kind of interesting is the censoring that some of these page owners and moderators have. There was a time where they kind of felt like they were holier than thou, and a lot of people were, my rules, and I'm a big shot. And people know me in the industry because I own this page and I'm moderating that. And those days are kind of gone. Most successful pages nowadays don't really have anybody who's front and center, who's really running the page, including mine, by the way, including ours that we use. I mean, I'm on there, but I don't run that page at all. It's done by a team, and we put stuff on there. We allow all kinds of conversations. I just don't allow solicitations when it comes to insurance and some of those other things. Sorry, I thought someone was calling me, but they're not. It's just a reminder to take some supplements, which is what I'm always doing. So gone are the days where someone would have a Facebook group and really feel empowered to decide what's going to go in there and what's not going to go in there. And those days were kind of yucky. And it was tough because a lot of favoritism was going on between recruiters and certain agencies. And I think it really did. Some egos got pretty big out there for a while there. And the wild thing is now a lot of those egos are non-existent. You don't see those people anymore at all out there at all. And because things change, and I mean for the better, and that time frame of my page is better than your page, and I'm gonna decide what can be posted, and I'm gonna kick people out and suspend them for 30 days and all that stuff. That stuff's kind of over because it's not helping the industry. But by the way, the censoring and the removal of posts still exists. I hear it all over the place. I hear it from other recruiters and other companies that I can't post on that because our posts are getting removed because we're not, recruiters will take shots, right? If it is a ICU Arizona page, and I'm sure there is one, I keep saying that. I'm sure people post med-surg jobs, or they post, surge tech positions on there because they think, well, it's Arizona, they'll push their luck. And the moderator feels, that they need to keep control of their page, and they're going to kick that company, that recruiter out, suspend them if they're posting something that's not there. It is what it is. Social media, I believe, in general, has our society having people believe that they're more important than they are, and we try to keep that real clear on Travel Evolved that we're just offering something. And, you got to be careful not to get lost that if you own this page, you're really something special. You just started a page. You started a page, and the idea was to help travelers be able to communicate with agencies, and I would ask those folks to keep that stuff in mind because that's really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do. And when you censor and hinder companies from putting information out there, I think you're diluting the value of your own page. But that's just my not so humble opinion. So at any rate, I don't think there's a lot of agency-based pages left. Going back 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was a number of us that were really heavy on social media, really pushing that page. It worked for us. I think a lot of those pages and a lot of those groups have diminished or are gone altogether. And there's reasons behind it. It wasn't pulling the value. It was more time being spent than what was being created from it as far as a monetary standpoint for those companies. So they stopped. In my opinion, and I'll leave this episode kind of at this, I really believe that there is a lot of room for good, constructional, transparent pages that are for healthcare travelers in general. I think it's hard to have a page keep that integrity and not become, a kind of a bitch session or a stomping ground for people to put their opinion out there and beat up things and give misinformation or to rally people behind bad thoughts and ideas on how to fix and change the industry. All ideas are good, but at some point you have to start realizing what's realistic and what makes sense and what doesn't. And I think all pages struggle with that. You want to keep that integrity, and we do at Travel Evolved. But what I hope for is that there are more pages like what we're offering you guys, and that is, complete transparency. I don't know why this industry isn't 100% open. Not 95, not 90, 100% open. Why is it that an agency feels you shouldn't be knowledgeable and educated on every facet, from tax information to market trends to what to pack when you go on assignment? I mean, the whole gamut. Why would you not want travelers to know that? Well, there's only one answer for that, really, and that is that what you're doing and how you conduct business, and potentially the amount of the pie that you're taking, you don't want travelers to know about. You want to keep that to yourself because you know it's high. There really is no other way around it. If you have nothing to be afraid of, why can't you talk about tough stuff? I get it doesn't help you to give travelers the bad news. And it oftentimes comes to what they are or are not getting based upon what you're able or not able to bill. There are some tough truths to that. And I'm talking about the weirdness between holiday pay when it's, when you're only getting, your 3 or 5 normal shifts in and one of those is holiday, and how the hospitals, there's some complications there that's really not fair to the agency because they tend to get their margins thinned out that way. But there's an awful lot that go the other way around. Let's be frank. There are an awful lot that the agencies are keeping money and they're not being forthright and sharing why this is the case. And one of the best examples I can give you is all agencies factor in a certain cost to onboard you for an assignment, which includes background, potentially whatever it is that they're offering you for free, which might mean a TB test or having all your titers drawn or maybe a set of scrubs or getting your license reimbursed that they're offering for free. All that's taken out before they pay you, and they calculate what they need to make. It just is the fact. You guys can believe me or you don't believe me. It's part of that. What's interesting is when you extend, almost all that expense is non-existent. I cannot tell you the last time someone asked me to re-drug test or re-background test, or you have to go back and do another TB when they're credentialing you for an extension. But for some reason, your extension rate doesn't increase. That's kind of weird, huh? How come that's the case? Well, it's because it's one of those hidden unknowns that you don't think about. It could be $1 an hour. It could be $300, $400, $500 over the course of the assignment. That's about anywhere from close to $1 an hour to over $1 an hour. So all those things are kind of, there's room to discuss and openly talk about it. And if you're not comfortable talking about it as an agency standpoint or as a recruiter standpoint, either you don't know or you don't want your traveler to know. So there you go. Lots of misinformation out there. I hope I did this episode justice. I kind of cruised through it because I didn't want to do like I do sometimes. And it's like repeat. But be careful on Facebook. Be careful on these groups out there. There is wonderful information. I will tell you, even way above what we're offering, the best information you can get is oftentimes from your fellow traveler. I think Travel Evolved and what we're offering here is a good secondary opinion on some things you may not know from another traveler, but I still think, and I'm just going to tell you, over this by far, your fellow traveler for the most part, and especially when you're talking with many of them, is a much better source for really what the skinny is on how to do everything right, how to calculate margins if they know, and all the things that you're learning about. I think that's the best aspect. So when it comes to Facebook groups, truly what is it that they're offering you? And the fact is, sometimes not very much. Guys, as always, I appreciate it. I'll catch you next time on Travel Evolved.